whether or not we liked this, and we did this a lot with our Colonizers World Tour coverage last year, we didn't always like the pieces of entertainment that we chose, but we learned from them. And sometimes the point is to be confused and to be uncomfortable and to not understand because we're trying to learn a different art format from a different cultural output.
We're the good doctors of Abbey Research. I'm Dr. Kristen.
I'm Dr. Erin.
And you are exceptionally welcome to our discussion of the Korean romantic movie that I refuse to call a rom-com for reasons I will get into, called Sweet and Sour, but may also be called something about sneakers. I'm not entirely sure, but we think it's called Sweet and Sour.
It's
and the
like
reason
Netflix has called it Sweet and Sour.
Netflix has called it Sweet and Sour.
That's as much as we can say.
We definitely know that. So how do we get here? Perhaps you assumed we were going to be talking about the Hindi version of Emma called Aisha. So did we. I fire up Hulu to watch Aisha and discover that there are no subtitles, and my Hindi is pretty rusty. So
and I don't speak Hindi at all.
Yeah, I mean, I don't speak it at all. I'm joking. Like, there's zero Hindi. I can barely remember how to say, how do you go to the bathroom? So we dropped back. And we decided that we still wanted to talk about something a little bit lighter, more, human interest, romantic side. We were hoping for a rom-com. And we still wanted to do it in a non-English speaking format. So that's a really hard set of parameters to Google. And I know that because I tried.
Because I Googled it.
Because I Googled it, and it was very difficult. And I'm an A+, like gold star Googler. Like, I can usually get exactly what I want out of that search engine.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I better just poke around the streaming services. Hulu's search feature, by the way, it was designed, I believe, by a sentient toaster. Because it just doesn't.
Terrible. Oh, I hate searching for things on Hulu.
It's I don't understand.
No, it's nonsensical.
Netflix's is better. And so I was like, okay, so we've talked about Bollywood. And we've talked about K-pop. But one of the other big entertainment forces on this planet is K-drama, is Korean television and movies kind of taking over Netflix. If you Google kind of Korean entertainment, what you will find is all of the K-dramas that everybody is watching on Netflix. And it does not show up in a lot of people's algorithms, even though the topic probably would match. Mm-hmm. Because Americans are so afraid of subtitles. So afraid. And honestly, to be frank, I'm not afraid of subtitles, but a lot of times when I throw on Netflix, it is for background noise. Mm. So it's, it's not also just shade. Like, sometimes I just want to watch Schitt's Creek for the 19th time because I don't have to pay attention.
Right.
So I get it. But we were like, okay, let's watch something with subtitles. So after a little while clicking around, I landed on Sweet and Sour, which what I was told was that a couple overcomes or works through long distance relationships. And I was like, okay, this could be really interesting in a rom-com situation. Let's figure out how they get back together. So, first of all, here's what we have learned. The genre convention of romantic entertainment in Korea does not necessarily match the Western genre convention of romance, in which it would be mandatory for the two protagonists to end up together at the end. Right. You can make an argument that that's possibly what happened in this movie, and we'll get to it, but they spent a lot of time with somebody who she didn't end up with. So, the genre conventions potentially are a little bit different. Also, it all felt a little telenovela-y at the beginning, and I think, that's part of it. I think there's a lot of over-exaggeration in some elements of Korean entertainment. So that was fascinating. I wasn't not entertained, but that's kind of it. Erin, do you want to say anything else before I kind of give the summary here?
I Yeah, I mean, I'm still not sure how I feel about having watched this. I did learn some cross-cultural lessons in film and storytelling. I was so confused. My notes are just full of, like, I don't understand what's happening. Why is there so much eating? I don't understand what's happening. I'm so confused what relationships look like. But this is, like, before you get into it, I'll just say, like, whether or not we liked this, and we did this a lot with our Colonizers World Tour coverage last year, we didn't always like the pieces of entertainment that we chose, but we learned from them. And sometimes the point is to be confused and to be uncomfortable and to not understand because we're trying to learn a different art format from a different cultural output. So I just wanted to couch that because I'm probably going to sound like frustrated and confused as we talk through this, but like I'm okay with it because that's part of the experiment that is cultural awareness and broadening your cultural sensitivity.
Yes. So launching in really briefly to the summary here, we meet at the very beginning a gentleman named Hayuk who is in the hospital with hepatitis B. Mm-hmm. He is a portly fellow, and his physical size is a major plot point in his story, which is why I bring it up. And he appears to be kind of in his interactions with his friends over his text messaging, which I did love seeing their text messages on the screen.
So many animated anime gifs.
So many gifs. This feels like he and his friends are like the Big Bang Theory. Like they make a comment at one point, like girls like that don't like boys like us. So this is kind of he still lives with his parents, which is kind of presented within this drama as a negative thing. I don't know if it is within Korean culture, but it appears to be within this. And his nurse is named Dayun, who is lovely and kind of flirty, but also really kind of weird and sends a lot of hot and cold signals. And finally, he gets out of the hospital. What I am sure I am supposed to view as a romantic gesture, tracks down her phone number and calls like every iteration because he's missing the last 4 digits after snooping it from the hospital. Calls like every iteration. Finally gets a hold of her. She invites him over, and it's very bizarre to me because she like wants to just sleep in the same bed, completely clothed and holding him, but when he tries to like touch her breast, she freaks out, and I'm like, girl, he has every reason to believe that that's what you wanted.
Yeah,
like, I don't understand.
And she's like, what we're doing here. She's like, it isn't like that. And I was like,
well, then what is it like?
What is it like, Dayun? And would you like to explain it to Hayuk, please? And us.
So Hayuk responds by being one of the most swoon-worthy cinnamon rolls I've ever seen. He just takes care of her constantly.
All the time. He gets her food and, like, leaves her cute messages.
Yeah. I was delighted to learn that nurses are overworked and abused around the world. Glad it's not just an American convention. So he also got a job right before he went to the hospital as an engineer. And so at one point, like he says, like, once I'm really established, you shouldn't have to work anymore because you're so tired. And it was all kind of very sweet. And then at one point in one very heartbreaking scene that felt very real, they went shopping for matching couple sweatshirts. What I know of Korean culture, this is a thing. Like, matching together while on vacation is a thing that a lot of couples value.
Yeah, because they were supposed to go, they were talking about going on holiday over Christmas.
For Christmas.
Yeah.
So, and they live in a town outside of Seoul. Like, that's a big plot point in a little bit. So I should say it's a small town. Incheon? I can't remember exactly. They only said, like, once or twice.
Yeah. Like, I saw it written, but I don't know how to pronounce it. But yeah, phonetically, it's Incheon. So,
he comes out of the store, says, I'm sorry, this is the biggest size they have. It only comes up to, like, just below his chest. And so instead she buys him matching sneakers. Which I will say in that moment, like, I felt really, if somebody had ever done that, it would have been like, I still want to match with you. I still want to be physically, visibly claimed by you. So let's work outside of this convention. I would have, like, proposed on the spot. So, like, I get it. And he tells us at the airport, after he gets these shoes, that he is going to lose this weight. He's going to lose this weight. He's going to lose this weight. And I should say, we'll come back to this, but Hayuk talking about his body is something that does not happen in American movies, and so that was really fascinating. So we get what is obviously a time jump, because then we meet Hyuk running, and he is, let's say he has done a glow up.
Mm-hmm. He's hot.
He's hot. He's looking fit, both in the thirst way and in the actual meaning of that word. And they are together and have been for a while. He is living with her now, it appears. And she's still working at the hospital. He ends up getting transferred from his engineering job in Incheon to an engineering job in Seoul. And this is where everything goes tits up. So he's got this job in Seoul that is like every soul crushing. He has to work a ton of hours. It's really competitive. He's contract, so he has to overwork. And there's this girl that originally he hates, honestly, because her behavior means that he should hate her. She's not a great character.
She doesn't seem nice, no.
Bo Young is this woman's name. I believe I'm saying that correctly. And eventually, though, they have to work together. If this was the enemies to lover, if this was the hating game, they would be the main romantic couple. We would be cheering for them and moving on. And their chemistry does end up seeming really natural, although she still ends up, I believe, as not a kind person. But that's fine. I liked that they let her be a messy woman, which is also something we don't get, both physically and emotionally, something we get in American film. So I was glad that she was really multidimensional in that way.
Yeah, I didn't love that Hyuk made fun of her so much.
No.
And berated her for her physical messiness. And the number of times he called her gross because she spilled food on herself. And I was just like, I understand you have complicated relationship with your body and other people's bodies, but that's just not kind.
Yeah, and the more time we spent with him, the less and less he seemed like the guy we had met in the hospital.
In the hospital, yeah. And I was like, oh, this is one of those glow-ups where, it changes your whole personality? That's not fun.
Oh, okay. So they end up getting closer. He ends up pulling away from Daeun. There's a whole thing, 3 nights in a row he's supposed to drive home, and he doesn't. And she's like, I have to tell you something. And he finally does it in the middle of this kind of fight because he's tired and she's tired. She tells him that she's pregnant. They then go to the clinic and she terminates the pregnancy alone. She tells him to wait in the car, which at that point was like, okay, they're broken up and they just haven't used those words.
Yeah, yeah. We just aren't using our words yet, but what kind of relationship is this? So we still watch as they continue to crumble, and then he kind of dives into more with Bo Young, and then he pulls back from Bo Young at one point, but then his work suffers and he can't do that, so then he dives all the way in with Bo Young. And in the meantime, Daeun is very, very clearly pulling back from him, withholding things from him, really kind of becoming as self-sufficient as she possibly can be. And then, at one point in the car, he pulls a Ross Geller and uses the wrong name to Daeun, in which I just almost crawled through my screen. But then I really crawled through my screen when a couple scenes later we end up at the airport. And we had been at the airport at the beginning of the movie, which is when Hyuk was presented with his sneakers. And here's what we discover, y'all. Are you ready for this? The Hyuk that we've been spending the whole movie with is not the Hyuk from the beginning of the movie. They are 2 different gentlemen. And the 2 plots, the beginning and the middle of this movie, have been happening concurrently. At the same time. Yeah. I did not see that coming.
Never seen that coming.
Never seen that coming at all. Full credit to those storytellers, because they had me hook, line, and sinker.
And I'd love to know if this is a genre convention in Korea and Korean viewers would have seen this coming, or if that was as shocking to them as it was to me.
Yeah.
So
same.
Interesting. So then she, as what they would do in Regency times, gives hot Hyuk the cut direct and goes on holiday with sweet Hyuk. Hot Hyuk goes back to the bar where Bao Young is, drunk as she frequently is, declares his love for her, tries to give her an engagement ring. The
engagement ring that he had
that
he bought
Daeun
for
just
Daeun.
gave back to him.
That boy is in trouble.
It's obvious he doesn't love Bayong, but he does not know how to be alone, and he's, like, rebounding somehow, and then he says shit, and the movie ends.
Yeah. Yeah. He is, like, I think, he is one of the least self-aware characters I've seen throughout a romantic dramedy. Or a drama. I'm not even going to say comedy, because there was, like, 3 funny moments.
I laughed more than that, but that's okay.
Yeah, it wasn't, I guess, like, there were...
I would not call it a comedy.
Yeah,
No,
I would not call it a comedy. Yeah, that's
I chuckled.
That's what I meant more of. That it, like, I wouldn't, like, a rom-com.
It's like a rom-dram instead, yeah.
It's a rom-dram with some comedy in it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think that was, like, one of my biggest notes, aside from all the questions that I asked, because I wasn't following the plot, was, like... He is the most, like, unaware person. He, like, has no idea why Diona is unhappy. He has no idea why she breaks up with him. He has no idea, like, anything. Like, nothing is his fault, ever. Like, their breakup scene in the car, he's like, why are you... He knows he has feelings for Boyoung. He knows that he said her name instead of Dion's. And then he's like, why are you accusing me?
Cannot fathom, son. It's like, just left field.
I don't know where she's getting this out of nowhere. Is this... And then, like, when he's sitting there trying to figure out what went wrong, he's like, was it the light bulb? What was it? Well, how did this all go wrong? I was like, you stopped investing in her as a human? Like, is this hard? Is this a trick question?
And at the same time, it made me buy, though, that he was he had glowed up.
Yeah.
Because that behavior is so typical of people who go through such a radical self-transformation and live in terror of that transformation reversing.
Yeah.
That everything becomes about them. There's a huge thing about how he hates sweets because then he'll get fat again. So evidently this character was fat in previous life.
Yeah.
And so it actually made me buy more that he was the same guy. Because I was like, oh, I've met this person.
Oh,
like,
yeah, we all know.
I've met this person.
Yeah, and, like, I'm like, writing this story in my head where I'm like, she fell in love with the guy that was, like the fat version of him. Not that she fell in love with him because he was fat, but that guy was, like, sweet and caring and okay with eating food and, like, enjoyed life and was... you know, took care of her and all these kinds of other qualities that were a part of that first Hyuk that, like, she doesn't see anymore. And I'm like, oh, yeah, well, I can understand why she's, like, pulling away. It's because that's not the guy I fell in love with. And I, like, wrote this whole story in my head, and it turned out it wasn't the story in my head.
It wasn't the story. And then
but maybe it was. Like,
I was trying to write the American rom-com ending. So, like, he goes to the airport, and I'm like, oh, my gosh, they're going to have this reunion at, like, the scene where his major transformation took place, and they're going to go on holiday and rekindle their romance, and we're going to get an epilogue, and it's going to be... And then I was like, holy fuck, it's a different human.
It's a different person. Yeah, and...
Okay.
But I still don't think she was, like... So 2 things about Diane that we haven't yet mentioned in this recording. One, the for lack of a better word, like, fat Hyuk, like, first Hyuk. Sweet. We'll call them sweet and sour.
The sweet Hyuk. Yeah, the caring Hyuk.
The sweet Hyuk, that's not his name. We learn in the part where they're catching us up to the actual story that's taking place, and she asks him if she can call him Hyuk. And I find that disturbing. And I
thought it was weird.
I thought it was weird, and I'm not sure, like, if we have Korean friends out there and you watch this film and maybe we're missing something in the translation, maybe his name was Hyuk, but it wasn't his primary name, and she just, like, I don't know, is it a common name? Like, it's
listed on Wikipedia as being part of his name, but we don't know if that's the movie or if that's real. Also, she met both of her boyfriends when they were her patients.
That's how my mom met my father.
But it was, like, almost the exact same pattern.
Yeah, it did not seem like a super healthy pattern. She was not being honest with sweet Hyuk at all, which is not a good start to a relationship. Because she lied about her ring and said it was a graduation ring. And, like, you know, I mean, she had a lot of stuff going on. Like, I'm not saying, like, her behavior was not understandable. It was. But then, like, she seemed really upset when she broke up with Sour Hyuk. And I was like, oh, okay. So I thought they were going to get back together. And then even at the airport, after she gives the cut direct to Glow Up Hyuk, she seems miserable.
Yeah, and it was very, and like, she's just so desperate to be taken care of, she hasn't actually analyzed what that would look like.
Yeah, because she was like, they were sitting there, and Sweet Hyuk was just so happy, and he's like, we're going to go on holiday, it's going to be great. And I thought maybe she was going to, like, leave him at the airport, because, like, the look on her face was just, like, devastation. And then she was like, can you carry my bag? It's heavy. And I was like, what? I don't understand what's happening.
And I thought that was a test. Like, okay, this is the reason I'm with him. I don't actually love him.
It's because he takes care of me. I don't
necessarily have feelings for him, but he takes care of me, and I'm so tired and so burned out and so overwhelmed. All I want is someone to take care of me. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, there was a lot of stuff going on. Obviously, we've had a lot of themes to talk about. There was just some conventions of this type of storytelling that did not translate culturally for us. Also, we have to talk about the weird old guy who was or was not real that worked at the engineering firm in Seoul. That,
the security guard,
the
maybe.
Security guard, maybe?
Or the angel. We don't know.
We don't know. Again, Korean friends out there, is this like a trope in Korean drama that there's like an external person? It's often a trope in romance movies here.
It's definitely in Hallmark movies. Like, I mean, there's always an angel in a Hallmark
movie. There's always an angel or like some kind of, magical
external force pushing people together.
Right, right. But throughout the entire time, I thought he was pushing Sour Hyuk and Bo Young together. And I was like, why? She's not nice. And he's like, and I'm just, all my notes are, I'm like, who is this old dude? But like, why is he doing this? And like, doesn't he care about Daeyeon? And like, we're not resolving.
What are we doing? And I was, Boyo, you need to get your priorities straight. Why is nobody using their words? Are people allergic to communication in Korea? Also, in Korea, is it really that easy to get abortions? I'm so angry.
He called her the wrong name. He is the least self-aware man ever. Why can't they just break up? Why is this random guy forcing proximity? It's not romantic. Is it supposed to be? Finally, so much traffic. Why can't she just get a job that's closer?
And wondering, like, so Netflix called this a rom-com. Wikipedia calls this a rom-com. Does Korea call this a rom-com?
Great question.
Because, like, America calls Last Christmas a rom-com, and that thing is not.
No, that thing is, like, it is not.
Amelia Clark is dead through the whole thing. Like, that's not
She's dead. She's dead and she doesn't come back. Like, she's not.
She's actually dead. There's not a possibility of a happily ever after with Harry Golding because she is deceased. And America has called that a rom-com.
It's a great Christmas rom-com. No.
No, she is dead. She's dead. Jojo Moyes does not write rom-coms. She writes rom-droms. Like, we have difficulty with genre conventions in the United States. So, it's possible that anyone from Korea that's watching this is like, these two girls are fucking idiots. This thing was never supposed to be a rom-com. Amazing. I would love to know that.
Please tell us.
Because everything in English told us that this was a rom-com. And if this is the genre convention of a Korean rom-com, I know to adjust expectation. I did enjoy this more than Dr. Erin did. I was riveted and I was curious and I enjoyed this more than Dr. Erin did. Not enough to ever watch it again.
No.
But enough to seek out other Korean art, for sure, for me. And I've had my eye on some K-dramas that fandom friends have told me about for a long time. But I also have a higher appetite for the absurd than Erin does. And this movie was absurd on several occasions.
So much traffic. And I did
love, though, that at the beginning he was all judgy about the people that wash their hair in the traffic.
You just knew.
And it's like, he's going to become that guy trimming his nose hair in traffic. He's going to be that guy. And he was.
Yeah. And, like, we talked about it offline before we started filming because we watched another Southeast Asian rom-com.
Taiwan, right?
It's Thailand.
Thailand.
Bangkok traffic love story.
Bangkok traffic love story sponsored by the National Train Company.
Train Company of Thailand. Which I loved that movie. It was so cute. But I was just like, I started out watching this and I was like, I get that this is like the most densely populated part of the world. And like, I have no idea what it's like to live in cities with that many people. And I'm sure if I did, traffic would be a central plot point of a lot of how I understand the world. But it's just, to me, like, if it starts, like, you could have played that on mute with no subtitles. And I, like, obviously you can see it's, like, Asian appearing people, but they live all over the world. And as soon as they got to traffic, I would have been like, Southeast Asia.
And it's so funny because not like I've spent a ton of time in Southeast Asia, but I have spent more than you. So it's like, it is part of the furniture over there.
Oh,
so
sure.
I was like, well, of course it is. But it's so, I loved that you pointed it out because it didn't even occur to me that it was something that is only a plot point in Southeast Asian films.
Like, we haven't seen it. I mean, it might be in others. Like,
well, the only other movie I can think of where traffic is a plot point is Notting Hill. And London traffic is also very terrible. So I will give you that.
Yeah, but it's like a part of the plot point at one point in the movie. Like, half of this movie takes place while he's
complaining about traffic. Totally.
While he is either in his car in traffic or complaining about traffic.
It's so much traffic.
So
I mean, we obviously have questions. You might have questions. I don't not recommend this movie.
No.
But I don't, like, wholeheartedly say, please everyone go watch it right now. I am like, if you are looking to look at pretty people in miscommunicative pain, which is an itch that might need to be scratched in your life.
This is your jam.
Yeah. Go for it. They are both beautiful people.
They are.
Beautiful people.
I enjoyed looking at Sour Hyuk. And
I enjoyed looking at Daeon. She was very beautiful.
They're very beautiful humans, yeah.
Very beautiful humans.
So was Bo Young. She was very pretty.
Bo Young was very beautiful. I just kept looking at all their hair and being like, how do you make it shine?
It's so shiny. I know.
It's so shiny, and your skin is so perfect. Anyway, what we are going to be talking about next on the cornucopia of coverage is a bit of a 180 from this conversation. First of all, it will be non-fictional.
It's a sharp curve.
And second of all, it's going to be about the institutional abuse of teenagers in the United States. So, we're going to be talking about Paris Hilton's documentary that lives on YouTube called This Is Paris. We are positive that we don't need subtitles for that one. So we can guarantee that we'll be covering it next week before we then jump into... we return to Hulu and jump into The Dropout with Amanda Seyfried and Naveen Andrews, which is the story of Theranos and Elizabeth Holmes, who might be, if we had a pantheon of fascinating monsters, she'd be like, it's like her and Adam Newman and Keith Raniere. Like, we just can't.
100%. She is fascinating. I am so excited for this.
It's unbelievable.
We love to talk about Theranos and Elizabeth Holmes. We haven't had the chance to gush about it for a while because there haven't been new properties. So as soon as we heard about this one, we were like, add it
cemented on the calendar.
Now let's do it. So we're very excited.
We'll take a breath. We will be talking about the Paris Hilton documentary because we need to. We've been covering other pieces of the troubled teen industrial complex, and we want to deal with this very seminal piece of art that deals with it. And so we will be doing that before we jump into Theranos and then Bridgerton. We want to thank you so much for joining us for this meandering and potentially confusing conversation. But we deeply, deeply are honored by your time. If you enjoyed the video, please hit like, because then that tells the algorithm to tell other people that it's a good little video, and we'd appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't, so you don't miss anything that's coming up. Like we just told you, there's a lot. It's going to be amazing. And in the meantime, my deep wish for you is that you do not spend your life in traffic and you are with somebody who can communicate with you.
It's all we want, right? It's all we want. To be seen for who we are and to not sit in traffic.
Have a great week, guys.
Bye.